Loving this new Vex architecture so much. Ooh. How? Yeah, that. Did Destiny get a graphics update? Because this shit looks good. Hold up. This shit looking kind of cleaner. What the hell? This shit looking kind of better. What the fuck? Oh, that reload is gonna kill me. Oh, this looks boss fighty.
The oppressive mind emerges. Sever it from this domain.
Oh, what?
The oppressive mind has shielded itself from intrusion. Try splicing a Vex consciousness into their network to break its defenses.
Yeah.
The impossible made possible. You truly are a thing of legends, Guardian. The oppressive mind that commanded this domain is no more. And now this region of the Vex network must collapse. The fabric of reality is beginning to return to its prior state.
At last, real progress.
This is how we save our people. By tearing apart the veil of night that the Vex have laid over the city.
Well done, Mithrax. Thank you.
An elite-sneed splicer would not have been able to endure this confrontation. And a Lightbearer without a splicer gauntlet would never have been able to enter this domain at all. The Guardian is a union being, a conduit between two houses. They are proof of what can be accomplished when separate components become a single machine. As Zavala Kel says, stronger together.
Zavala Kel. Ow.
All of it to leave annihilation in Ellie's wake as she makes her way to the beach with the darkest of intentions. But then there's a moment of hesitation. The boy Abby is determined to protect. That was her to Joel. Is Abby really so different from me? Is she so different from Joel? The answer doesn't matter. This is a confession of pain. The pounding drums, the chunks of flesh and blood pouring from our protagonists. This is a horror movie, and we're playing the horror. We can resist the pain all we want, but it's always going to end the same way, in destruction. Finally, it consumes us. Ellie spends every last token of her soul in this moment, a final act of destruction. And just when our worst fears for Ellie and Abby are on the verge of coming to fruition, Joel saves us. The friends we've lost, or the
Oh, can you find it?
Carl?
Come in.
Wish I could be on.
Your powers grow to fight the Vex, but still their offense increases. We sacred splicers study the Vex. We learn to move through them like tall grass. But these, they are strange to me. Their focus is unpredictable. This frustrates me. I can see the data streams as you walk through their space, but I cannot see from where they victory cuts one of the threads that hold this endless night in place. The Vex will send powerful foes against you, but be not swayed. Keep to the path.
For if Ellie kills Abby, she'll waste her most precious opportunity to understand Joel. A patient, loving man who saved Ellie not because of his own selfish wants, but because of his selfless love for her. An entirely new dimension to Joel that recontextualizes this entire story. Ellie has spent this entire game trying to forgive Joel, trying to understand what greater purpose he believed she had, and the ensuing confusion and doubt Ellie feels over that. Would Joel not want her to avenge his memory, to ensure that the sacrifice he made for her did not go in vain? Is this not a good cause, inspired by a miraculously good person? And did the tragedy that befell Joel, the tragedy this whole quest spawned from, not rob Ellie of her ability to forgive him in the first place? This is the confusion that circles Ellie, and it's only at the moment in which understanding Joel has never been more at stake that she finally finds clarity. It all comes down to the lesson Joel learned for himself in The Last of Us 1, and Abby earlier in this game. It's about love. Not only the love Ellie can receive, but the love she can give the world. That's her purpose. Ellie may not know Abby like we do, and sparing her life after nearly killing her is far from what anyone would call love. But the very decision to spare Abby, to let go of one's ego in a moment of superiority, is to finally accept and understand that Abby is not so different from her. A conviction that can only root itself in a place of empathy. More and more often, not just gamers, but audiences and consumers of all types of art and media want the feeling of finishing a game, seeing the credits burst onto the screen, and going, wow, that was a great game. Or alternatively, they might expect the ending they've received to move them to tears, to then let the beauty of the experience wash over them. The Last of Us Part 2 is certainly both a great game and a beautiful experience, but watching the ending unfold all the way until the credits pop does not give you that feeling. In fact, the ending feels particularly numb, but deliberately so. It's impossible not to feel the crushing weight of this experience, a game where the protagonist goes from having it all to losing pretty much everything by the end. The loss is handled so realistically that it's difficult to even find the appropriate emotion to react to the ending. The track by Gustavo Santaolalla that first plays over the credits is fittingly named Beyond Desolation. If there was ever a describable emotion one could muster for this ending, it's probably that. Taking the entirety of my own experience with the game into account, through every beat I've covered from Joel to Ellie to Abby, it was hard not to succumb to the sheer emptiness of the game's ending. I knew this was ultimately a story about love, and the challenge we humans face both when we're deprived of it and when we try to give it. I also knew it was about obsession and factionalism, and the extent to which both of these forces can lead us to do horrible things. But what I didn't know was why. Why did Neil Druckmann, Haley Gross, and Naughty Dog feel this story needed to be told in the way it was told? This was the question at the forefront of my mind amidst the emptiness of the game's ending. Beneath that emptiness, something about the game resonated with me very personally, and I needed to find out what it was, why it was.
Rome, I'll get plenty of resources! What? How did I get Siberia?
Almost immediately after beating The Last of Us Part 2, I started my second playthrough. Not only did I want to re-experience the game's best moments, but my goal was ultimately to learn more about the game. I started taking notes, which a video game has never made me do before. I scoured the world for every collectible, every line of optional dialogue, every nuance in the animation I might have missed. Eventually, to both my delight and my surprise, multitudes of the game started opening up to me, a series of startling revelations in a game already filled with rich thematic meaning. And through those multitudes, the smattering of collectible notes paralleling, contrasting, or refracting the experiences of the characters, the complete connections between Ellie and Abby's parts of the game, and the numerous decisions made over the deliberate characterization of the game's cast, I found answers to nearly all of my questions. The best way to explore those answers is to frame them around an entirely new question. Why are these games called The Last of Us? In other words, who is The Last of Us? Being that this is the apocalypse, The Last of Us could very well be the last of mankind. This would be the story of the last humans to walk the earth. While that would be a chilling sentiment, I think it's a bit too broad and somewhat nihilistic against what these two games are really about. So maybe The Last of Us is a bit more specific. A demographic or subset of mankind. A generation. But which generation? It's probably either Ellie's generation, people who were born after the apocalypse, or it could be Joel's generation, people born before the apocalypse. Given the sharp focus on the old in the first game, and then the very clear focus on the young in the second game, it seems equally likely it's both. But having reflected on the meaning of not just Part 2, but also Part 1, I can say with absolute confidence that The Last of Us refers to Joel's generation. And here's why. The apocalypse of these games doesn't merely result from an unfortunate stroke of circumstances. Rather, the world of The Last of Us is a byproduct of humanity's failures. An inevitable, thoroughly fucked reality that results from a series of bad decisions mounted by human vice and the resounding shrug of a hopeless generation. The disaster that befalls Joel, Tess, Bill, Henry, Tommy, or any other survivor from the first game is not an event. It's their new reality. And not only will they be forced to endure it, but the responsibility of ensuring that humanity somehow goes on falls firmly on their tired shoulders. The responsibility of not only teaching them how to survive this new, hostile reality, but to learn from the sins of the Father, to create lasting change, and unfuck the world that will so unjustly be given to them. In the first game, your mission is just that. Where Joel becomes a standout in a generation of apathetic adults, Ellie comes to represent the next generation, the literal and symbolic hope for mankind's future. Her immunity gives the Fireflies hope for creating a cure, but because she was born after the onset of this post-apocalyptic world, she will one day inherit the responsibility of fixing it. It's an enormous undertaking, and that's a vital part of what makes your journey in the first game so compelling. You are passing on what you've learned to the next generation, and against all odds and practically God himself, protecting it with every fiber of your being, no matter who says otherwise. All of this culminates in a final decision where Joel all but wipes the Fireflies off the face of the earth just to rescue Ellie.
You just come after her.
In the sunset of Part 1, and through much of Part 2, Joel's actions seem monstrously careless. He not only doomed mankind's future, but killed dozens of lives, and took the life of the only man who could ever engineer a cure, which directly resulted in his demise 4 years later. Yet, in the final flashback of Part 2, Joel proudly tells Ellie he would do it all over again. How could someone so vehemently defend their villainous actions, and refuse to show even the slightest bit of remorse for the lives they've doomed? It took a while for me to understand it, but because of that moment, on my second playthrough, I saw Joel in a completely new light. Joel's most important discovery over the course of the first game is understanding that if Ellie dies, the hope for future generations will die with her. Because even if there was a cure, would things really change for the better? This is a ruthless world, filled with a never-ending supply of heartless assholes, selfishly pushing down everyone and anyone who threatens their ego and sense of security. Think back to Bill, a man so driven to extreme isolation that he rigged a whole town with explosive traps. Or David, who had the gumption to earn the trust of a little girl just so he could then hunt her down for his community's next meal. The face of humanity is arguably uglier than the infected it's faced with, and Joel knows this. And because Joel knows this, he knows that the cure may stop the infected, but it will never fix the true ugliness at the heart of mankind. To Joel, there's no going back. Humanity must live with what it's done. But by saving Ellie, by allowing her to make the most of her gifts, both to inspire and change the lives of others, Ellie can contribute to a genuinely better future. It is her generation that will change the world for the better. Thus, The Last of Us does not mean the last of mankind. The Last of Us is the last generation to fail mankind. Ellie's generation will be the first of us to ascend. Or will it? That becomes the struggle of the almost entirely young cast of characters in the second game. All of these people, Jesse, Owen, Dina, Mel, Manny, Abby, and Ellie, have never known a world without the infected. They've seemingly been conditioned into accepting violence and clan mentality as everyday norms, understanding them as necessary aspects of life in post-apocalyptic society. Despite the goodness and kinship these young people are capable of, as we see both in Jackson and in the Wolf Stadium, they're only capable of playing out the cycles of violence that was handed down to them by their elders, by Joel's generation. In many ways, they've only been handed the failures of previous generations, and find no resolve to end the patterns of those failures. Empathy, compassion, and compromise are not values they've inherited, and the whole world will be worse off for it. But that doesn't mean there aren't those who've tried to stop that trend. Both Joel and Abby's father, Jerry, lived their last days lovingly, being examples of everything their generation has not been to the young. Maybe through their examples, they can plant the seeds of love they hope to see in the world and create lasting change. The power and importance of The Last of Us Part 2 is seeing how Ellie and Abby learn from those examples. Driven by anger and unrest, both Ellie and Abby adopt the cold brutality this world has inundated them with. Ellie particularly starts to walk in the footsteps of the broken man Joel was when she first met him, and by the end of the game, she's practically walked a mile in his shoes, lived through so many of his mistakes. Yet, in so many moments in both the journeys of Ellie and Abby, they can never quite outlive the examples of love in their lives. It's a confusing, messy, and sometimes traumatic contradiction they grapple with, and the actions born out of that confusion ends up costing them much of their identities and their happiness. But ultimately, the loving examples in their lives become more powerful than the darkness around them, a reassuringly hopeful assertion in a game so rife with human vice. And though this doesn't seem like it should apply to Ellie, I think there are glimmers of hope in the game's ending that suggests otherwise. Ellie's confused, obsessive ends may have cost her everything, but not the love Joel showed her. When she walks away from the farm, away from Joel's guitar in the last shot of the game, I believe she's going out into the world to find her redemption. She's finally going to fulfill her purpose as an example of empathy and change in a dark world. A promise so great that it can't be played like all the other promises on Joel's guitar. Of course, getting there is going to be a journey unto itself, but that's probably what The Last of Us Part 3 will be for.
I can work with this.
With all of that being said, everything being said, I believe Neil Druckmann, Hallie Gross, and Naughty Dog wanted to tell the story in the way they told it because they want us to think about what we're doing to change tomorrow. How can we act not out of anger or aggression, but with empathy and compassion to make a truly better world? For the older generation, who've lived their whole lifetime in the 7 years since they played the first game, it's the responsibility of being a positive example for the young. For the younger generation, who probably grew up watching a playthrough of The Last of Us on YouTube, it's the exasperating responsibility of inheriting the problems previous generations have handed down to us. Racial inequality, economic disparity, women's rights, mental health, and the never-ending battle against apathy and ignorance. Personally, there's no single piece of art or media that has more effectively captured what the sheer horror of becoming an adult in the 21st century feels like better than The Last of Us Part 2. But alternatively, because of the game's honesty towards this waking anxiety, few pieces of art have left me more assured that there is a way, and that I do have a purpose. That no matter how confused I may be, no matter what venomous obsession clouds my thoughts like moths swarming a flame, or how many mistakes I make, I can always try again. That is the unmistakable humanity of The Last of Us Part 2.
Come back anytime.
I know. I know it's a fucking mess. I know. But we can choose to be happy.
Damage reports are coming in across the system. My red jacks are full.
We're allowed to be happy.
Given time, darkness will encroach again. We have to be ready.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. This was 2 months in the making, largely because making this video was a battle for my free time between working full-time hours at work, trying to manage a short film project with my friends that ultimately got canned. But yeah, making this video took a while, and I'm sorry for that. And additionally, I'm sorry if, for many of those who have subscribed here over the last several months because of my Clone Wars videos, that this may have not been the video that you were hoping for or expecting to see next, or this was not a video for you. Sorry if you fall into that crowd. But if this was the video for you, hopefully you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I'm sorry once again. But at the end of the day, no matter what we do on this channel, my goal is always to share my thoughts and express how I feel about the things that I love, and hopefully connect to other people through the very act of doing that. And I had to do that with this game. This is one of my favorite games of the year so far. There's still several games to come that I'm looking forward to hopefully talking about on this channel, but for now, we're going to step away from The Last of Us Part 2 and get back to some things that I'm sure I've been looking forward to in the last few months. Awesome video in the works for that very soon. Star Wars Rebels, which I'm going to be starting.
Something, but we can be corny, fucking sugar. I ain't no dummy, dummy. I like to say what? Oh my God!
obsolete idea. Just go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, and invest for the long term in the stock market. See, why would you save money when they're printing trillions of dollars? The gap between the 1% and 99% is massive. You see, it's not just money. You have to step back and look at the bigger picture.
So what do you do?
The most
The Black Army thanks you.
We going up and
Maybe this can fabricate parts to remake Volunder. And then, we need new solutions.
nearly gone.
fucking everything!
Nearly gone.
Fucking everything! I gave 18 years of my life to stand in the same spot as you.
If I have to hear that one more fucking time.
I'm so sick of people saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it.
I have nothing! No one! Everybody shut up! This is my daughter I'm talking about! Shut up! I don't wanna die.
How can I relax when I messed up so bad?
I don't know.
English girl named Fiona. African girl Adiola. Body shaped like cola. Back up, here, come closer. Vida loca. Bullet high as a cat, never sober. Python here with a cobra. Free up my bro Casanova. Bad man persona. Bad man alone can control her. Sorry, your sister. English girl named Fiona. African girl Adiola. Body shaped like cola. Back up, here, come closer. Vida loca. Bullet high as a cat, never sober. Python here with a cobra. Free up my bro Casanova. Bad man persona. Bad man alone can control her.
Bells and whistles scaled back like bells and whistles scaled back like an isolated dragon. He feels trapped when he's not inebriated. Fair to say he's fairly sedated. Most days of the week he might have made it if he lived.
Please keep your hands clear of the apparatus. Your ghost might put you back together, but I'll have to fix your mess by hand.
Ooh.
triangular splice improves rigidity, but reduces tensile strength. Interesting. Begin log. Initial experiments in polyphasic recombination are discouraging. Perhaps another route is wiser. A triangular splice improves rigidity, but reduces tensile strength. Interesting.
Cold. Take it cold.
So the strands get sequenced and then what? What I'd give to be working with stocks and barrels. Mother, if you're watching, I hope you know I'm doing everything I can.
Areola.
A triangular splice improves rigidity, but reduces tensile strength. Interesting.
Editing lady Democrats on the computer, so it's gonna look super.
Forge statuses are unclear. They could have been stripped for parts or could be operational in enemy hands. Either way, we're out of hands.
What? I never did this.
So the strands get sequenced and